A golden light flashed in his eyes as he thought of that thing, the immortal function, a mysterious realm that humanity had never touched. Etella spoke loudly, breaking the silence. In this battle, Shirone made a bold decision, releasing his own immortal function. The room immediately fell silent. The professors, all tense, listened attentively to her every word. Normally, this phenomenon was called Nirvana. Etella slowly explained, Nirvana is not death, but a completely different state from life. She emphasized, Shirone reaching Nirvana does not mean he is dead. Several professors in red robes looked bewildered. One muttered, I don't understand this. Another professor scratched his head, his steps faltering. This is a magic academy, not a place to discuss spiritual matters. Suddenly, a silver-haired female professor stood up, her sharp eyes looking forward. Her voice was calm but resolute. I understand what the principal is saying. The silver-haired female professor spoke with certainty. It's possible that Shirone, who unlocked the lock, is still alive. I understand that completely. But no one can be sure that he will wake up. She paused for a moment, her eyes heavy. If we keep waiting for Shirone without knowing when he will wake up, we may have to face the worst-case scenario. Principal Alpheas immediately interjected, his voice low. And what is that scenario? The red-robed professors turned to look at him, their faces filled with panic. One of them trembled and exclaimed, Of course the academy will be closed. Alpheas shook his head, resolutely denying, No, that's not it. His face darkened, revealing an unprecedented seriousness. The worst-case scenario, he said slowly, is that all the students and professors here will be exterminated. The entire hall fell into a deathly silence. Not a sound, only heavy breathing could be heard. Alpheas continued, his voice as steady as a rock. Without Shirone, no one would have survived, including you. Alpheas's voice was calm and unhurried, but every word he uttered was as heavy as stone. Isn't there any hope, even if it's less than 1%? He lowered his head, his face in the dark, making it impossible to see his expression. That child has sacrificed his life for us. As professors of this magic academy, shouldn't we try our best? Alpheus' words were like daggers piercing the hearts of the red-robed professors. They held their heads, their faces darkened, silently struggling in their minds. Alpheus continued, his voice filled with remorse. If we take responsibility and accept punishment, the academy won't be closed. Then, for that child, shouldn't we sacrifice ourselves like he did? That morning, the academy campus was as bustling as usual, with laughter and chatter resounding. But in a corner of the hospital room, the atmosphere was heavy. Shirone lay motionless on the bed, her breathing weak. Amy and Neid, two close friends, were by his side day and night, their eyes never leaving him for even a moment. Amy gently placed her hand on Shirone's forehead, her voice trembling but full of determination. Shirone, no matter how long it takes, whether it's years or decades, I will wait. I will wait until the day you come back. Beside her, Neid couldn't hide the pain and anxiety etched deep on his face. Amy kept muttering, as if comforting herself, just say you'll come back. That's enough. But Shirone's suffocating silence made her collapse. 2 lines of tears rolled down her cheeks, Amy begged, her voice lost. Say something, please. Shirone still lay there, eyes closed, not moving at all. Then suddenly his eyelids fluttered slightly, revealing deep blue pupils like the surface of a lake. Slowly, Shirone sat up. Strangely, he was naked. He was bewildered, his eyes dreamily scanning the room. Where am I? Shirone walked, but his feet unconsciously slipped. He paused, a flash of memory. I remember, he whispered. Memories flooded back. Shirone found himself holding a girl tightly, both of them falling off a cliff. In order to save everyone, he had pushed his immortality to its limit. He raised his hand, looking at it under the dim light. Is this the next life? It seems I still haven't forgotten the memories of when I was alive. Suddenly, Shirone stopped, feeling something unusual. But why? He stood still in the middle of an indefinite space, surrounded by an endless fog. No matter how far he walked, the scenery remained unchanged, as if his 5 senses had completely gone numb. Shirone continued walking, his mind spinning. Don't tell me. His foot touched an invisible object, as if he was stepping up a non-existent staircase. He was startled, his eyes wide open. I knew it. But then everything was still the same. Shirone was lost, his face bewildered. He muttered, his voice filled with confusion. Distance doesn't exist here. Shirone imagined himself waving to another clone, miles away. He muttered, you can only measure distance when there are 2 landmarks. But then, the clone suddenly disappeared. He searched around, feeling uneasy. If one of the landmarks doesn't exist, the concept of distance disappears, and space can't be formed. He glanced around thinking, so that means no matter where I go here, it's like I'm not moving at all. Suddenly a voice rang out, deep and majestic. Excellent. I didn't expect you to understand the meaning of space. Indeed, you deserve to be here. Shirone was startled, looked up, and his voice trembled. Who is it? Am I dead? His eyes widened in surprise. Above, a brilliant hole of light appeared, surrounded by countless rays of light of all colors. The source of the power flared up so fiercely that Shirone had to shield his eyes from the glare. Power flooded in, filling the void. Shirone's eyes widened in surprise. Wow! From within the brilliant magic power, a pair of slender legs gradually appeared. A beautiful girl with sparkling blue hair walked over. She smiled, approached Shirone, and said, I've been waiting for you, Shirone. It's you. Shirone was bewildered. His voice faltered. Who are you? The girl chuckled, placed her hand on her chest, her voice gentle but full of authority. I am the goddess. At the same time, on the 5th day since Shirone's death, the outside of the academy campus was quiet. The gentle sunlight from the sun shone on the red tiled roofs, but the atmosphere was still heavy because of the recent tragedy. The professors, in a desperate attempt, delayed any remedial measures, but the students did not accept that. In the student council meeting room, the atmosphere was tense. The students sat in rows watching attentively. Behind on the blackboard, the words were clearly written. Do you agree with the remedies that the professors deemed appropriate after the meeting? Yes, no, the students shouted, filled with disappointment. The principal they once trusted so much had now betrayed them. Suddenly, a black-haired young man slammed the table, startling the entire room. He shouted, his voice filled with anger. Everything that happened originated from the principal's mistake 40 years ago. He stepped down, stood facing the student council, and continued his presentation. The charges related to the principal must be resolved on another day. Shirone's funeral was also postponed to another day. They are just avoiding responsibility, not wanting to take responsibility. Amira, the president of the 2nd grade student council, crossed her arms, her face full of displeasure. The student council must intervene in this matter. The entire auditorium immediately exploded, shouting in unison, yes, yes, the principal must be held responsible for this disaster. Punish him, punish him. Suddenly an arm was raised, cutting through the heated atmosphere. Wait, everyone is misunderstanding. Siriel stood up abruptly, her voice resolute. I am Siriel, Class 5. Everyone is assuming that Shirone is gone forever, but that's not entirely true. The girl calmly explained, her eyes determined. It's true that Shirone's heart has stopped beating, but his body has not yet decomposed. Her words caused the entire auditorium to stir. Really? Is that true? Whispers spread everywhere. Siriel continued. The professors made their decision based on this suspicion. Amira quickly interjected, her voice urgent. Is it true, Siriel? If Shirone is not dead, then why did his heart stop beating? Siriel closed her eyes, pondering for a moment. Amira urged impatiently. Please, tell us clearly, what is the reason? Siriel stood up straight, her hands clasped in front of her chest, her voice resolute. That is the result of unlocking the ability to be immortal. Her eyes widened, her analysis clear. The ability to be immortal does not directly affect a person's life. Currently, the Ivory Tower is still debating this concept. The room immediately fell silent. Siriel trembled slightly, her voice becoming timid. That is a mysterious topic, so before she could finish, whispers from the students below arose. What is the ability to be immortal? I heard that it is the highest realm a mage can reach. Realm? But magic is based on knowledge, so what's so special about that? Siriel was stunned, fear creeping into her heart. Sweat beaded on her forehead, her face pale. She thought to herself, wait, why did they react like that? At the same time, Amira also pondered, muttering, a mysterious topic? Isn't the 2nd greatest talent of wise mages to make decisions after careful consideration many times? Siriel glanced at the crowd in panic, thinking to herself, I see. She imagined the students in front of her as children. We are not magicians yet, we are just students, immature children. Especially the lower grades, they only believe what they see and hear. She kept imagining the unruly students full of malice towards the headmaster, and the upper grades biased because of their hatred for him. They don't have that kind of superior reasoning ability. But what does this have to do with the accusations? Siriel's mind flashed with the scene of the headmaster being arrested, and Shirone lying motionless in a flower-filled coffin, then being taken away to be buried. She held her head, tears streaming down her face, screaming in despair. At this rate, Shirone will be taken away to be buried. What should I do? Suddenly, an arm was raised, breaking the tense atmosphere. I'm Mark, grade 7. Mark stood up, his eyes burning with anger. The honor of the academy is built by our students. If people hear rumors that the school has untrustworthy teachers, they will lose faith in us too. Mark placed his hand on his chest, his voice softening and warm. But we all know that person once taught me what it means to be a true magician. The students below began to silently realize. Mark continued, his voice full of emotion. In his memory, a large, wrinkled hand grabbed his small arm, leading the way forward. The image of the principal playing with the children appeared clearly, the days when they were innocent children. The entire audience gradually changed their minds. One student whispered, That's right. It was he who taught us to be good people. Mark's voice still echoed, full of conviction, although the principal has made mistakes in the past, but his eyes sparkled with admiration, as if to shake the entire auditorium. A student whispered, "That's right, Mark. If logic doesn't work, we'll tap their emotions." The girl sitting next to Amira glanced over and saw Amira tapping her fingers on the table, muttering, Amira's eyes were dull, but there was a calculating glint. She thought to herself, if we take a vote now, the result will be 5 against 5. On the blackboard, there were dense writings, tangled lines of accusations. Below, the students were in an uproar. Some were crying, some were laughing. One voice shouted, "What kind of accusation? Please forgive the teachers." Another sighed, "Hopefully these elementary students will agree to disagree. We have to separate them." Amira sank into sadness, her heart heavy. At this rate, they won't press charges, she thought. What should I do? A hand was raised, and a loud voice rang out. "Ardino Fermi, Class 1. He stood up, immediately attracting everyone's attention. Siriel paused, thinking, Why is Fermi speaking up? Fermi saluted, his voice low but sharp. "Everyone, I forgot to say something important. We owe Shirone our lives. Is there anyone here who doesn't feel heartbroken that he sacrificed himself for us?" The faces of the students below sank, and the atmosphere was heavy. Siriel turned around, extremely worried. Fermi continued, his eyes sweeping over the restless Siriel in front. "Therefore, we should not continue to resist." His face revealed a hint of malice, and his voice was filled with agitation. "For our savior, we must fight to honor Shirone's soul." Siriel tensed up, shouting in protest. "Wait, honor the soul? Shirone isn't dead yet," Fermi calmly replied, his voice cold. "Really? As far as I know." Fermi smiled coldly, his voice as sharp as a knife. "They are using chemicals to preserve Shirone's body. If he is still alive, why would they do that?" The whole audience was stunned. Amira quickly asked, her voice urgent, "Is that true, Member Fermi?" Then she turned to Siriel, questioning, "Member Siriel, do you know about this?" Siriel tried to stay calm, but Amira's eyes seemed to pierce her. "Please tell us clearly, Member Siriel," Amira insisted. Siriel trembled, tears rolling down her cheeks. She stammered, "I refuse to provide information that would incriminate myself." In her heart, she whispered, "Amy, I just apologized to you." Amira waved her hand, her voice resolute. "Now, we will start voting." As expected, the results were completely one-sided. Siriel quietly gritted her teeth, her heart filled with resentment. "It's all that bastard Fermi's fault." Outside the schoolyard, a crowd of students gathered, their expressions indignant. They shouted, "Resign, Alpheas! Submit to questioning!" Amira took the lead, her voice resounding. "Hold Shirone's funeral. Stop preserving the body of the deceased." In the observation room, Amira and a guy looked down in shock. "It's over." Alpheas, with a heavy expression, was casting magic on Shirone's body. He muttered sadly, "It seems they have realized that I used magic to slow down the process." His face showed a hint of sadness. "We don't have much time left." The scene changed to Shirone. In front of him was the goddess. She spoke in a gentle but majestic voice. "Don't you believe me? Just like the objects created by humans have their own thoughts and forms, everything I create has the characteristics of the goddess." She smiled, her eyes deep. "And you, Shirone, are the one who resembles me the most." Shirone was stunned, absent-minded. The goddess gently raised her hands, her voice leisurely calling, "Shirone." The goddess, with a beautiful face, eyes sparkling like dewdrops, and long, gentle hair, spoke, "Do you want to create a world with me?" Shirone was confused, unconsciously took a step back, his voice faltered. "What?" He was clearly bewildered, stammering, With me?" Suddenly, Shirone was startled to realize that he was not wearing anything. Embarrassed, he quickly used both hands to cover his body, his face flushed, awkwardly explaining, "I'm sorry." "This is too sudden. I'm not that kind of person. He was so embarrassed that he couldn't speak, sweat pouring down his back. The goddess laughed at Shirone's cuteness, gently waving her hand. She waved her hand, using magic to create a set of clothes to cover him, then said, "Don't be shy. This is not your world." Her eyes narrowed, her smile warm. "Your body still exists in your world." Shirone was silent, looking up at the goddess. He spoke hesitantly, his voice full of doubt. "I knew it. This is another world, right?" The goddess slightly raised one hand to her side, tilted her head, and replied, "Not exactly. This is a different world from the one you live in." She raised her index finger in front of her face, and on the tip of her finger appeared a small, round, black dot. "A dot," she said, "is a dimension, without sound, without surface." The round, black dot stood out in the white space. At first glance, it was small, but as he got closer, Shirone realized it was not as simple as he thought. From the outside, the black dot seemed to contain no space. But when he zoomed in, going deeper inside, he saw a vast space where he was standing, talking to the goddess. Actually, she smiled, everything is condensed into that small dot. Shirone looked down at his hands and thought, a dot? But there is a gap between my hands. In other words, my body exists in 3 dimensions. He looked up and said, there is a 3-dimensional world inside a dot? The goddess smiled gently, her eyes sparkling. Your perspective is very special. From a hidden angle, her facial expression could not be clearly seen, but her voice was full of confidence. That's right. That's the nature of time and space. A world, when viewed from afar, looks like a dot. She brought the black dot on her fingertip close to her eyes and looked straight at it. But if you come closer and observe, it is an endless world. Shirone was stunned, standing still for a moment. The goddess tilted her head and asked, what do you think, knowing that I am the one who created that world? He was speechless, then spoke, her voice trembling. I can't go back. The goddess looked at Shirone in surprise, her voice soft. Can't you? You still don't want to give up? Shirone quickly interrupted, shaking his head in denial. That's not it. I understand very well. He awkwardly spoke, his voice faltering. Can I ask one more question? The goddess smiled, replying, of course. Shirone's pupils contracted. He looked straight at her, pressing. Why did the goddess lie? The question was like a knife hitting a weak spot. The goddess was stunned. The water beneath her feet shook slightly. After a moment of silence, she spoke, her voice calm, but slightly trembling. The goddess doesn't lie. No, I don't need to lie. Her eyes drooped, but a smile still appeared on her lips. Because if I think something doesn't exist, then it won't exist. Shirone's face darkened. His eyes darkened. He muttered, lies again. Just a short sentence, but it was enough to make the goddess change her expression. Her eyes were no longer as bright as before. Instead, a gloom flashed across them. Shirone suddenly spoke, her voice resolute. Are you really a goddess? The goddess was silent, not answering immediately. After a while, her eyes looked up, sharp as a knife. There seems to be a misunderstanding. Your definition of goddess and mine are different. Let me show you what a goddess is. Shirone stood still, waiting. The scene changed to a small village nestled between rolling mountains. Under the clear blue sky, the gentle sunlight shone down on the fields, where people were holding sickles to harvest the golden rice. Nearby, in the cool shade of the porch, 2 women stood chatting animatedly. The children were running around the fields, chasing the flying dragonflies. Everything around them was so vivid that Shirone was lost in thought, immersed in the scene. He muttered, as you can see, this world is a replica. He turned his head and looked at the goddess. She was holding a sparkling sphere in her arms. She spoke, her voice gentle but full of authority. However, I can teleport that farmer. She held the sphere in one hand and placed the other hand on top, her index finger pointing straight at a farmer in the small village. The goddess's 2 fingers slowly penetrated the outer shell of the sphere, which was also the sky of the replica world. At the same time, where Shirone was standing, a blinding light suddenly enveloped him. He looked up and was stunned. Through his perspective, he saw the goddess's 2 white fingers, now magnified to a huge size, floating high in the sky. 2 giant fingers gently grabbed the back of the farmer's shirt, lifted him up high, and then dropped him right in front of a horse grazing in the distance. The goddess, standing some distance away from Shirone, spoke. Space has changed, which means time has also changed. She cradled the bright ball in her palm, her voice rising and falling. Because time and space are one. She lifted a knight on the ball, continuing, the same thing exists in your world, right? If you teleport a knight in your world, the knight that had just been lifted up now appeared in a different position. The goddess smiled. A unit of time of a turn is passed on the chessboard. That means you are manipulating time and space in the dimension called the chessboard. Shirone silently turned his gaze to the goddess's back, while her voice still echoed, deep and mysterious. The goddess shook her head slightly. I am not the invincible or transcendent being you believe. Over the golden rice fields, dragonflies flew in the deep blue sky. She continued, I am only the designer creating a lower dimension than the one I am standing in. The goddess's footsteps quietly approached the farmer, but he did not notice. The creatures think that the goddess is the absolute entity, she said, standing behind him, her eyes following his thin back. Because I possess power that they do not possess, and I can manipulate them without them realizing it. The farmer's face suddenly magnified, just a rough slab of wood, 2 empty holes in place of eyes. This farmer, the goddess whispered, does not know that he has been transported, just as he does not know that this world is a copy. Shirone looked horrified, his eyes widening as he heard the goddess's words. She was still smiling, her blue eyes looking straight at him. There is only one way for him to know. Shirone's pupils contracted, his eyebrows furrowed, a drop of sweat rolled down his cheek. He trembled and said, immortality. The goddess placed a hand on the farmer's shoulder, nodding, that's right. Immediately a burst of magic erupted. The farmer gradually disappeared, turning into sparkling particles. The goddess tilted her head to look at Shirone, her voice deep. That's immortality. Both of them raised their heads, watching the sparkling particles fly up into the sky. The goddess continued, immortality is the feeling that shapes the world. The sparkling particles followed each other, stretching endlessly, blending into the deep blue sky. The sparkling particles flew all over the sky, but were eventually blocked by the transparent glass of the sphere. The goddess held the sphere tightly in her palm, her beautiful face suddenly becoming mysterious and ghostly. However, she said, the world of the farmer is still contained within this sphere. He cannot perceive entities in higher dimensions. Shirone stared at the sphere in horror, his heart pounding. The goddess smiled, her voice gentle but sharp. Do you understand now, Shirone? She leaned over, placing the sphere aside. I have brought you who has released your immortality and was almost torn apart to this special area. Shirone was silent, his wary eyes fixed on her. After a while, he spoke, his voice trembling. What do you want from me? The goddess cast magic on the sphere as she replied, her voice rising and falling. This. The magic sphere gradually shrank under the goddess's spell, turning into a small black dot. Shirone stared at it, unable to move, a drop of sweat rolling down the corner of his eyes. The goddess spoke, her voice full of charm. A dot. Come to the space-time I created, Shirone, and create another space-time. The black dot grew larger, then shrank into a smaller dot. In there is another space-time, and then another space-time, if we repeat it over and over. The goddess looked up at the endless space, where the stars were sparkling brightly. She smiled brightly. It will become a perfect universe. That is the space-time matrix. Shirone's face darkened. He stood still, unable to utter a word. Suddenly, he spoke dryly, I can't. The goddess tilted her head, her eyes slightly surprised. Why? I'm sure you have no reason to refuse. The goddess tilted her head, her voice gentle but cold. You don't like my proposal? Shirone bowed his head slightly, replying, not bad. I think becoming a goddess creating a new world sounds good. Your plan for a perfect universe isn't bad either. But then, his eyes suddenly sharpened, like a knife blade. But if I enter your space-time, another person like me will have to be sacrificed. The goddess's blue eyes darkened. A light flashed in the dark corner of her face. She raised a finger, her voice hard as if giving an order. I won't give you a choice. If you refuse, I will tear you to pieces. Shirone still stood there, his expression determined, unwavering. He replied, his voice certain, I won't do it. The goddess smiled coldly. We will know soon enough. The goddess suddenly launched a magic attack, causing the surrounding water to ripple violently. She remained in her original position, her expression calm as if she had done nothing wrong. But in the blink of an eye, that calmness disappeared, replaced by a look of utter surprise. She muttered, now I understand. On the other side, Shirone stood tall, his entire body intact, without a single wound or scar. His hair fluttered, his eyes flashing a deep blue. He spoke calm but sharp. A dot. The space-time matrix you speak of, it is like a spirit domain. Shirone raised one hand forward, then resolutely raised it high, activating his own magic. And this is, he directed the crimson magic towards the girl who called herself the goddess, his gaze determined without hesitation. Shirone's eyes burned with determination. He confidently asserted, you are a mage. The crimson magic stream from his hand shot straight at Ada, confronting her without flinching. Ada slowly retreated, his voice cold. Shirone, don't do anything you'll regret. Shirone stood there, deep in thought, trying to guess her intentions. Suddenly, Ada's lips curled slightly, magic bursting around her, creating an overwhelming aura. Do you think you can defeat me, she asked, her voice full of challenge. Shirone was slightly worried, his heart in turmoil. He thought to himself, I definitely can't win. She has reached the level of calling herself a goddess. No, perhaps even stronger than a goddess. But even so, his eyes remained unwavering. He spoke, his voice resolute. No matter what, I've made up my mind. Shirone shook his head, his voice firm. This is not where I should be. He recalled the scene he had just witnessed. The moment the farmer unlocked his immortality, his body vanishing without a trace. He looked at Eta, his eyes sharp. But you said my body still exists in that world, so I can return, right? Ada replied, his voice cold. Yes, I can return, but I won't succeed. I'll just die again. She tried to persuade him, her voice softer. Think again, Shirone. But Shirone was determined, without hesitation. Even so, I will still try. He turned his back, resolutely refusing Ada, not looking back. Ada pondered, thinking, capturing it is not difficult. But the problem is that extreme energy. Her worried eyes were fixed on the crimson energy in Shirone's palm, shimmering like a threat that could not be ignored. Ada pondered, if so, this space will be destroyed. After a moment of thought, she began to activate her ability. Shirone was worried, her heart pounding, not knowing what Ada was planning. Ada raised her arm, creating a black hole that swallowed the crimson energy in Shirone's hand. Below her feet, water flooded out from somewhere, sparkling strangely. After casting the magic, Ada continued, "This place is the intersection of space and time. When you enter, you will go through the reverse journey to return to where you started." Shirone was skeptical, not believing that Atta would really let him go. He asked, his voice reserved, "Will you really let me go back?" Ada smiled, but before nodding, she gave a condition. "Promise me one thing. If you fail to return to your original world, you must come back here and do as I say." Shirone was still filled with doubt and worry, unsure if he would really be able to return. Ada repeated coldly, "I told you, you won't succeed." He looked at the gate leading back, a deep darkness that seemed to swallow all light. Turning back, Shirone bowed slightly, his voice sincere. "Thank you for letting me return." Atta curled his lips, replying, "You thank me too soon. It's not easy for a pure and sacred being like you to return to a complex physical body." She paused for a moment, her eyes flashing with warning. "Not to mention, the human body is full of disgusting things. If you pass through, you will become a strange being, no longer human." She pointed at the gate. "If you want to give up, come back through this path." Although Atta wanted Shirone to reconsider and stay, he could still see the determination in his eyes. Shirone shook his head, his voice determined. "I won't give up." Shirone nodded slightly. "Goodbye." He slowly entered the gate, determined to return to his body. "Have a safe journey." Ada, or the goddess, gave her final greeting, her voice soft but full of meaning. Shirone walked inside step by step. The gate was pitch black, without any light. He groped his way, placing each step carefully. "If I go through this way, I can return," he told himself, continuing to move forward despite the darkness. All around him was nothingness, not a sound, not a sight. The darkness swallowed everything, making Shirone feel like he was walking in vain. Suddenly, he stopped in panic and looked around. This place, he was stunned to realize that the scene was no different from the white room before. Turning his head, he was horrified to see the gate still standing behind him. Ada, the goddess, was still standing there, her deep eyes staring straight at him, a smile flickering on her lips. Shirone was silent, his heart heavy. He thought to himself, "Now that I think about it, everything is so strange. Why did she let me go so easily?" Ada's words echoed in his head. "You won't succeed." He panicked, sweat beading on his forehead. "I fell for her trick. I'm trapped in this time. Space prison." Suddenly, a memory flooded back. 2 months ago, at Uncle Amin's house. Uncle Amin's image gradually became clear. His deep voice rang out. Shirone found himself in class, the students around him standing still like statues. Uncle Amin said, "That's right, Shirone. That's a stop motion spell." He was stunned, muttering, "Stop motion spell. The highest level of magic, where the mage moves time faster than the speed of light." He turned to Uncle Amin, his voice surprised. "We are moving at the speed of light?" Uncle Amin smiled. "You're very smart. That's right." Uncle Amin looked up at the sky, his voice low. "So when the stop magic appears, space and time seem to stop." He pointed up high, where the stars were twinkling. "The light is magical. It can make a magician faster. When it reaches a certain level, the star flies faster, and infinity will appear behind it." Shirone imagined that star, gliding across the sky, trailing a brilliant light. Uncle Amin continued, "That infinity star can circle the earth, catching up with time. That is the foundation of stop magic." Back in the present, Shirone fell into thought, absorbing Uncle Amin's words. He muttered, "If this is a space and time trapped within the speed of light, I can escape." He opened his eyes, his gaze determined. "If I am faster than the speed of light, I can get through. But how?" Superluminal speed, a concept that only existed in theory, never in reality. Suddenly, Ada's words echoed in Shirone's mind. "The moment you step in, you will go through the process you took to get here in the opposite direction." He stood up, his eyes flashing with realization. "Understood." Shirone activated his purple magic, the ability to be immortal. He got into position, preparing for the race. The speed at which the ability to be immortal spreads throughout the universe is instantaneous, he thought. Right now, I am just a soul, without a body. Can I be faster than light? Shirone's eyes burned with determination, even though he knew the risk of failure. "Even if I am destroyed, I will not give up." He rushed forward, racing against the light. Shirone moved at a terrifying speed, leaving a trail of purple light behind him. He whispered, his heart pounding, "Success." Shirone's soul rushed at a terrifying speed. Only purple streaks of light could be seen passing by like shooting stars. In the distance, he saw his body, motionless, on the hospital bed. His soul, carrying a bright purple streak of light, headed straight towards that body where he used to belong, where his friends were waiting. On the bed, Shirone's body lay still, surrounded by healing magic from the hands of Principal Alpheas. The scene shifted back to the real world, 8 days after Shirone passed away. In the hospital room, Principal Alpheas sat by the bed, his eyes deep in thought, not leaving Shirone's body. Behind him, Miss Shayna and Miss Etella stood silently, their faces filled with worry. Neid and Eruki sat on chairs, their eyes red, quietly waiting. Amy leaned against the door frame, her eyes distant but unable to hide her pain. The atmosphere was heavy, only the sound of healing magic softly resounded. Suddenly, Siriel's voice rang out, attracting the attention of Amy, who was standing nearby. Look! Look outside! Outside the window, a group of people held up petitions, making a ruckus. A leading student shouted loudly, "As representatives of the students of Alpheas Magic Academy, we submit a petition to all the professors." The crowd behind, led by the white-haired girl, student council president Amira, shouted in unison, "Principal Alpheas must surrender and be interrogated by the Magic Association." The students who did not participate in the protest anxiously spoke up. "Senior, calm down." Teacher Shina, angry, pushed open the door and came out, sharply questioning, why did the student council incite other students, causing chaos in the school like this? Amira stepped forward, holding up the paper, her voice resolute. "No one instigated it. We didn't want to do it to this extent, but Shirone has been dead for 8 days." Amira shouted, her voice filled with indignation. "Why hasn't there been any announcement yet? Shirone has fallen into a coma, but it's only considered a coma if his heart is still beating. You can't fool us by saying that his body hasn't decomposed. Isn't that enough to convict the principal?" She held up the form, her eyes burning. "We still have Shirone's death as evidence. Even if the elders want to cover it up, this matter can't be covered up." Teacher Sheena lowered her head, her voice low. "I apologize for misleading you, but this is the best decision the teachers have made. We will take responsibility for this." Amira was stunned, thinking to herself, can the teachers really take responsibility? Why did she say that? Is there something we missed? She muttered, "What the hell is going on?" Fermi, standing nearby, observed Amira with a stern gaze. He thought, "I've read the entire report. It seems like this girl is hesitating." His eyes were cold, and he silently called out, "Amira." Fermi thought to himself, his eyes flashing with calculation, "She will join the parade. If Amira turns her back, things will be in trouble. More precisely, my plan will be in trouble." He didn't want to be dragged into the dangerous line. Fermi smiled kindly and said in a gentle voice, "Let's do it this way. Let us see Shirone's condition. We will decide after seeing him with our own eyes." Teacher Shayna immediately became angry, shouting, "That's impossible! You have to wait until everything is settled." Her words were like pouring oil on the fire. The agitated crowd shouted, "That's impossible! How can we believe it? Go inside! We have the right to know! Fight for our school!" Maria and a few students tried to push forward to stop them, but were pushed by the crowd and fell to the side. Maria shouted, her voice breaking, "You can't do that!" Fortunately, Mark caught Maria in time, shouting loudly, "You guys are going too far." But the crowd still rushed forward aggressively, without any hesitation. Suddenly, a black shadow rushed out from Shirone's treatment room, smashing the glass window, making everyone below stunned. He landed right in front of the building's door, blocking the way of the chaotic crowd. It was Neid. He stood tall, magic bursting out around his body, his voice fierce. "Fine, charge in if you want." Neid's eyes were cold, exuding murderous intent. "But if you do that, someone will die. I swear I won't show mercy to anyone who dares to come." The schoolyard immediately divided into two factions. One side opposed, the other side blocked. Amira was stunned and asked, "What?" Amira was slightly surprised. Her face stiffened. Her voice became stern. "So we treat you well because you did a good job, and this is how you talk to your seniors." The surrounding students also showed anger, their eyes full of hatred. Neid stood up straight, his body bursting with small crackling thunders. He said sternly, "Do I need to say it again?" The energy around Neid exploded more and more. The enormous power spread, causing the air to shake. Looking at the scene before them, the crowd opposite began to tremble, their faces filled with panic. They exclaimed, "Wait, impossible." Amira turned pale, muttering, "Impossible." Neid coldly released a huge amount of magic power. Brilliant electric rays surrounded him. The students were stunned and exclaimed in unison, "That's plasma magic." The crowd stirred, exclaiming in surprise, "Isn't he just a 5th grader? Even in our school, only Riken, a 1st grader, can use that magic." Up high, Neid's teammates watched, their faces filled with panic. Amy exclaimed, "That's real destruction magic." Siriel continued, her voice trembling, "He's been hiding this magic?" Only Eruki, standing with his arms crossed against the wall in a corner, seemed to have expected it. He muttered, his eyes cold, "You bastard, you dare to use that magic." Neid tensed up, his body shaking from enduring the terrifying power. He was deep in thought, knowing the consequences if he continued, but his face gradually lost control, his anger burning. "Shirone isn't dead. If you trash dares to touch him, I'll kill you all." At the same time, in the hospital room, Shirone's body lay motionless on the bed. A stream of brilliant purple power was approaching. Deep down, he felt, I am returning to where everyone is. Suddenly, small ghost-like flames appeared, hovering around the purple power. From within the purple light, a hand reached out, trying to touch the flickering flames. Then Shirone's image appeared, a transparent body. He was running, trying to escape from something. He knew clearly something was following him. A voice echoed in his head. What is this? Shirone covered his face, panicking, but the voice did not stop. Rebirth, the lowest existence. Hearing these words, Shirone's eyes widened in horror. The voice continued coldly, humans always have a strong will to survive. Shirone was stunned, as if awakened. So that's how it is. He remembered what the goddess had said. It's not easy to combine something pure with a spiritual entity to return to a complex physical body. Shirone recalled the goddess's words. The human body is filled with disgusting elements. Those words were now engraved in his mind. He shouted, his voice fierce and full of unwillingness, No, I will return. But a ghostly voice echoed around him cold. Go back to where? There is nowhere waiting for you. Then it continued, as if stabbing straight into his heart. The only thing waiting for you is death. Those words ignited anger in Shirone. He roared, his eyes burning. Shut up. He ran with all his might towards his body, trying to escape the red rays of light that were clinging to him. I will return to my world. He raised his hand, clenched his fists, and shouted, Get away from me. At the same time, in the schoolyard, Amira pointed at Neid, her voice harsh. Why can't you accept that your friend is dead, stupid junior? Amira roared, her eyes flashing, her hands clenched. She cast a spell, creating a cloud of black smoke that covered the entire space. This is weather magic that can absorb, she declared. The students behind Amira were also ready, their eyes shining, preparing to cast their spells. One shouted, Neid, do you really think you can fight all of us? In the sky, countless sparkling magic bubbles appeared, hovering menacingly. Amira sneered, her voice cold. Do you think you can defeat all of us? Suddenly, footsteps rang out, accompanied by a sarcastic voice. I can't believe you let yourself fall into a battle that you can't control. Eruki walked over leisurely, curling his lips and asking, Do you need my help? Neid was startled, turning back. Eruki. Then he glanced over, his voice questioning, Do you also think Shirone is dead? Eruki shouted, his voice filled with indignation. Aren't you on their side? The crowd was stunned, whispering, What is he talking about? But Eruki remained calm, replying, Of course not. His expression suddenly became determined, his eyes scanning the crowd in front of him. I just don't want them to do as they please and take Shirone away. Amira seemed to go crazy, screaming, gritting her teeth in indignation. Bastards. At the same time, in the hospital room, Shirone was still unconscious on the bed. A deep voice sounded beside him. Alpheas lowered his head, looked at him, and sighed. It seems this is the end. Amy was startled, turned around, her eyes filled with confusion. What are you talking about? What do you mean by the end? Are you going to bury Shirone? She couldn't believe it and questioned repeatedly. Is that what you really mean? Beside her, Sheena and Etella stood silently, their faces filled with sadness. Alpheas turned to Amy, his voice low. Amy, look outside. He looked out the window, saw the students preparing to fight, his heart heavy. The brats have activated the death magic, ready to kill each other, he sighed, his voice full of sorrow. If this continues, this will lead to another tragedy. Amy heard this, tears welled up in her eyes. She grabbed Alpheas' hand, stopping him. No, Shirone is not dead. She sobbed, her voice faltering. You know that, right? Alpheas just closed his eyes, giving up, not saying a word. Amy lowered her head, tears of sorrow rolling down, whispering, Shirone. In another corner, Fermi covered his mouth, a sinister smile on his lips. He thought to himself smugly, Fight, be afraid. Fermi glanced at Neid and Eruki, his eyes calculating, I will become your pursuer. On the other side, Amira was slightly worried, thinking, Is this true? The students are preparing deadly magic to confront each other. Suddenly she spoke, pointing at Eruki. You are Eruki, the one with genius syndrome. Eruki's expression did not waver. Amira continued, her voice mocking, You, who are colder than anyone, act on emotions. She arched her back, shouting, Do you really believe Shirone is alive? Eruki replied, his voice calm but firm, I only have one answer. He looked straight at Amira, resolute. Shirone is not dead. Hearing this, Neid was stunned. What? Amira's face darkened, and she laughed. Really? A crazy person who thinks he is right? Eruki replied bluntly. Of course. The answer made everyone widen their eyes, wondering in unison, What? Eruki continued, his voice calm. I have evidence. Amira immediately refuted. Show us. What makes you think Shirone is still alive? Eruki began to explain. The first reason, he raised his hand to the sky, declaring, It's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I'll let you see for yourselves. Everyone looked up at the sky, their faces filled with curiosity. The bell, they whispered, thinking. It's like a spiritual explanation. What's going on? Neid, standing beside him, was also confused. He's counting, but... While everyone was still wondering, Amira suddenly shouted, I understand! I understand! Amira went crazy, shouting, we will confirm Shirone's condition ourselves, no matter what. Eruki calmly raised the document in his hand. Amira kept shouting, how long do you think you can stall for before the class graduates? Suddenly, Canis appeared, speaking in a deep voice. This is interesting. Can I join? Amira pointed fiercely, shouting, you, how dare you appear here without any fear? Beside Canis was Ariane. Amira gritted her teeth. I will catch you this time. Remember my words. Canis curled his lips, not caring. Try it if you can do it. Eruki was still intently flipping through the document, muttering, 27 seconds late. Canis crossed his arms, his voice joking. Whatever. I will repay Shirone now. Neid stood by watching Eruki flip through the pages puzzledly, asking, Eruki, what is it? Eruki calmly raised the notebook, his voice even. A notebook from the Thunder Dragon? Neid was surprised, shouting, what? Eruki calmly replied, I diagnosed Shirone's condition and sent the collected samples. Neid suddenly remembered the scene where Eruki used a knife to cut Shirone's hand and exclaimed in horror, since when did you, more importantly, you did this in 5 days? From the capital? Kana stood watching, his face expressionless, making Aaron beside him confused. Amira interrupted, her voice harsh. Thunder Dragon? What kind of trick is this? Do you think the name Mekadin will change everything? Eruki calmly replied, don't worry, I'm using an alias. If I use my real name, my father will be troubled. He raised the notebook higher. Moreover, don't you think what's in this document is more important? Amira shouted, her voice sarcastic. So what? Does it contain magic that can bring the dead back to life? Eruki did not deny it, his voice calm. It's called Analysis of Immortal Function and Coma State. As soon as he finished speaking, the entire crowd was stunned, standing still. Neid turned to look at Eruki, his eyes filled with surprise. Eruki explained, based on the analysis of the subject's cell structure, they are in a state of suspended animation. Everyone in the room bent down, carefully observing the document. Eruki continued, with the sample collected 24 hours after the subject passed away, the functions of the organs did not change significantly. He flipped the document, pointing at the data. According to the results, the subject's body may be in a state of suspended animation, but it cannot be concluded that the functions have completely stopped. A murmur arose, making Amira nervous. She shouted loudly, her voice tense. What's the difference? Amira shouted, her voice trembling. That means he's not dead? Eruki calmly continued. Thunder Dragon classifies 3 types of cardiac arrest. 1, the heart stops completely. 2, the heart stops temporarily. He paused for a moment, then said, and 3, the heart doesn't work, but is in a state of being stopped. Amira turned pale, exclaiming in surprise, wait, the 3rd type doesn't make sense. Eruki flipped through the document quickly, his voice sharp. This is the important point. Listen carefully. An image of a heart appeared, he explained. When observing a creature that has stopped its heart, based on the body's ability to be immortal, 2 new cases can occur. In front of the crowd, Eruki calmly said, Case 1. If the subject's self-control ability is stagnant for a special reason, that self-control force is exhausted. He held up the watch and continued. Moreover, the observer's concept of time may be different, leading to erroneous judgments. Eruki continued, his voice firm, while the body's functions are still normal. Hearing this, Amy breathed a sigh of relief, leaning against Siriel's chest, her eyes filled with relief. Eruki further explained, an outsider cannot observe this activity due to the space-time barrier. He flipped through the document saying, based on magical logic, the subject may have crossed that boundary. However, Amy, in the infirmary, listened to Eruki's persuasion, her eyes anxiously looking towards Shirone, or Ariane Shirone, who was still lying motionless. Eruki pointed to the last page of the document where there was a prominent red seal. He concluded, his voice firm, it cannot be considered dead. Neid, tears streaming down his face, choked up. Eruki turned around, his eyes shining with hope, his smile radiant. How is it? I have found... He paused for a moment, then said, his voice filled with confidence, a way to revive the dead.